Hi everyone, good day ma'am, good day classmates. I am VN Limas from BSHM 3B and today I am going to tackle about the Philippine law. But first is I will be reporting chapter 1 which is the introduction to law and tourism and hospitality. So our learning objectives, we can identify the different kinds of law. We can explain the concept of tourism law, the importance and application of tourism law, and we can determine the sources of law relevant to the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry. So first is we will define what is law. So the law is a system of rules that a society or government develops in order to deal with crime, business agreement, and social relationships. So and also the law is defined as a binding custom or practice of a community. So you can also use the law to refer to the people who work in this system. So, in its general and abstract sense or derecho, it is the science of moral laws founded on the rational nature of man. In its specific and concrete sense or lay, it defined as a rule of conduct, just and obligatory, promulgated by legitimate authority, and of common observance and benefit. So, kinds of law. So, for our purposes, the different kinds of law are classified as so we have two kinds of law, which is the as to purpose and as to scope. So, as to purpose. So, there are two laws that belongs to as to purpose. So, these are the substantive law and the adjective law. So, first we have the substantive law. So, it is a law which creates, defines, and regulates rights, or which the rights and duties which gives rise to a cause of action. So, a substantive law may derive from the common law, statutes, or a constitution. So, for example, a claim to recover for breach of contract or negligence or fraud would be a common law substantive right. So that is one of the example of the substantive law. Then second is we have the adjective law. So it is a law which provides the method of aiding and protecting rights. So, the portion of this law that deals with the rules of procedure governing evidence, pleading, and practice compared to the substantive law. As to scope, so there are also two laws that belongs to as to scope. So these are the general or public law and special or private law. So first, we have the general or public law. So it is a law which applies to all of the people of the state or to all of a particular class of persons in the state with equal force and obligation. So the examples of law that belongs to general or public law are the criminal law, international law, and political law. So criminal law, so it is a law dealing with crimes and punishments as well as the procedure for that purpose. So the main theories for criminal law are to determine crime, to reform the perpetrator, and to prevent further crimes. Then international law. So it is the body of rules or principle of action governing the relations between states. So issues that fall under international law include trade, human rights, diplomacy, um, government preservation, and war crimes. Then political law. So it is the law regulating the relations sustained by the inhabitants of a territory to the sovereign. So it is an essential tool of governing action, an instrument with which government tries to influence society. Then the second law is the special or private law. So it is a law which relates to particular persons or things of a class. It is a private law handles legal issues of the relationships between individuals. So example of these are mga contract law, property law, and tort law. So the law that under special or private laws are civil law, maritime law, and mercantile law. So first is we have the civil law. So it is the general law that governs family and property relations in the Philippines. So it determines and regulates those relations of assistance, authority, and obedience existing among members of a family. That is civil law. Then second is maritime law. So it is the law dealing with commerce by sea, involving of ships and harbors and the status of the seamen. And the third one is the mercantile law. So it is also known as commercial law, derived from the law of merchant, which includes commercial paper, insurance, and other types of agency. So it is also the body of law that applies to the rights, relations, and conduct of persons and business engaged in commerce, merchandising, trade, and sales. And now we have the concept of tourism law. So first, what is tourism? So tourism is defined as the custom or practice of traveling for pleasure, as well as the promotion by establishment of countries to attract tourists. So a social, cultural, and economic phenomenon which entails the movement of people to countries or places outside their usual environment for personal or business professional purposes. So example of these are if we are visiting Panglao. So Panglao is not our usual environment. So we can consider as one of the tourists and belongs to tourism. So the World Tourism Organization defines tourism as the activities of persons traveling to and staying in places outside their usual environment for not more than one consecutive year for leisure, business, and other purposes. And also tourism law. So tourism law is the body of rules or principles of action which deals with the regulation authority involved in tourist travel and accommodation. Importance and application of tourism law. So, especially today, society has evolved wherein business establishment engaged in tourism. So, obviously, no, um, right now in this generation, tourism is booming. So, almost of the establishment is nag-engage in tourism. So, the objective of tourism law is to provide legal and regulatory framework for tourism development and management. So, the preservation of cultural traditions and natural resources, and to facilitate the participation of private sector and local communities in tourism. So, the application of tourism law is very important so that the private sectors will participate. Sources of law relevant to the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry. So there are 6 sources of law that relevant to tourism and travel hospitality industry. So these are the Philippine Constitution, the statutes of legislative enactment, administrative or executive orders, regulations, and ruling, judicial decisions or jurisprudence, custom, and other sources. So first is we have the Philippine Constitution. So it is the fundamental law of the land to which all other laws must conform. So it establishes the structure, policies, roles, and duties of the Philippines government. It also contains the Bill of Rights and set out the state's obligations to promote and uphold social justice and human rights. Then second is that statutes of legislative enactment. So it is the written will of the legislative department rendered authentic by certain prescribed forms and solemnities prescribing rules of action, or civil conduct with respect to persons, things, or both. So, examples of the statutes of legislative enactments are the Dangerous Drugs Act, Public Service Act, Civil Code of the Philippines, and more. And the third is administrative or executive orders, regulations, and rulings. So these are issued by administrative officials under the legislative authority. So examples of these are rules and regulations promulgated by the Secretary of Tourism, BRI, circular rulings, administrative issuance by the DFA, and more. And the fourth is the judicial decisions or jurisprudence. So this refers to the decisions of the Supreme Court in interpreting the law of the Constitution. So it provides that judicial decisions applying to or interpreting the laws or the Constitution shall form a part of the legal system of the Philippines. Fifth is custom. So it is a rule of conduct which in a given place and among given groups of people has been followed for an appreciable time. So it is a habitual course of conduct observed uniformly and voluntarily by the people. Then the last one is the other sources. So these refer to decisions of foreign tribunals and opinions of textbook or writers. So that is the other sources. So that's all on my report on chapter 1, the introduction to law in tourism and hospitality. So I hope that you've learned something in my report. Thank you for listening and God bless.